I know you've seen some stories on squatters, and it's so bad. The question is, well, which story on squatters are you talking about? That's exactly my point. So there's a squatter story where the squatters ended up killing the lady a while back. That was in Pennsylvania. Mom was beaten to death. There was another squatter situation where a mom was found dead in a duffel bag in a Manhattan apartment. There's another squatter situation. The most recent one that happened, there's two that happened in like the last week. One was a lady had inherited a house from her mom, and it's worth like $1 million, but it's just because it's in New York City. And she went to go, do some business, take care of it. I think she was just going to sell it or something. There were squatters living there. So she called the cops. Hey, there's guys in my house. The cop came there, took their stories. They're like, yeah, we've been here for more than 30 days. The cop's like, well, you got to give them notice. She's like, no, I'm changing the locks on them. And so she went to change the locks. She got arrested. This happened in Queens. There was a standoff with the lady. So someone can just move into your dead parents' house. And so there's a lot of these stories. The other squatter story is the viral video that was going around of some dude on TikTok. You're like, well, who cares about some dude on TikTok? Well, he has 500,000 followers, and he gives instructions on how to illegally immigrate to America and make good things happen, how to exploit the laws, how to get free money, how to get free food, how to get free housing, free transportation, and now how to get a free home. I would play it for you, but you're not fluent in Spanish, so what's the point? If you are fluent in Spanish, go look it up. But we do have some squatters laws here in Texas, but it varies from state to state, and you kind of walk away from the whole context of these multiple stories, because like 4 of them happened in the last few months, and you're like, what's the point of this? Who thinks this is right? Who thinks this is a good idea? Well, let's talk about squatters laws, because to understand why people support these, you got to understand the philosophy behind it. And like a lot of things that come from the other side of the political aisle, there's two different angles here. There's the elites, the true believers, and then there's the mindless foot soldiers. Useful idiots is what they're called in communist propaganda, but the people who actually go throw bricks through windows and make bad things happen, they're not the true believers. That's not the AOCs of the world. That's the people that they enrage them, they agitate them, they get them fired up, and then they point them in a direction for political purposes. And because they're dumb and easily manipulated, they're easily exploited for such ways. But the squatters' laws are inherently Marxist in a few ways. It's not that Marx wrote these laws out, but it has an inherent subversion of private property. And on the other end of that, see, that's for the elites. For the mindless foot soldier, it exploits their natural, just envy-based motivations. All of the useful idiots, what are they worried about? Privilege, or he's rich and that's not fair. These people on the nice side of town, you got to eat the rich. They shouldn't have that. They're exploiting these people over here who are downtrodden. But let me get a little deeper than that, because in a free market capitalist society, the way I would like to arrange government, and if you're listening to WBAP, probably the way you would like to arrange government, free market capitalism, individual rights. You own your home. You have private property rights. You may own 2 homes. You may own 10 homes. But for the home that we're talking about, whoever is on the title, that is the owner. They have control of that house. They can control who goes in and out of it. They can control what the locks are. And the control is in what? It's in private hands, private property. Squatters' laws end all that. Because now the use of that house, the control of the property, not necessarily the ownership, but the use and control of that property is now not determined solely by the owner, private means. It's now determined by what? You got to go check with the rules of the state first. See, now the government actually has control. Just like that, boom, you lost your private property rights. The title may be in your name, but if the government can step in and say, no, you don't get to stay here, these other people get to stay here. If they can kick out the owner against the will of the owner, then it's no longer private property, or at least it's no longer controlled by private interest, but it is controlled by government. So if you overboil down your economic definitions here, what's it called when government owns and controls all the property and means of productions? It's socialism, pure socialism, communism, something like that. But what's that middling ground called? What is that where ownership is still technically in private hands, but the government has so many regulations and so much control over it? The government's really the guy in control. Now, the ownership and sometimes the profits can go to private hands, private ownership, government control. What's that called? Oh, it's the second ugliest word in the English language. It's fascism. That's what fascism is. It's economic fascism. Either way, it's a flavor of socialism because the government now has control of that private property. You, the private property owner, does not. And who does this benefit? This benefits both the people who like to do the agitating and both the people who like to be paid off for being the mindless foot soldiers of the agitators. The squatters' rights laws are awful. I cannot believe anything like this would get passed in the first place. This isn't like the frontier. This isn't like the TV show 1883 where there's just vast expanse of land and no one's ever claimed it. And we sure would like to have this settled if you can come live out here and start a farm in 10 years, just rope off 30 acres or 40 acres or whatever it is, and we'll make it happen for you. Yeah, there's some like arguments for homesteading on land that's never been owned before. But when you have private property, clearly this is owned by someone. This is owned by the lady in Manhattan. This is owned by the lady in Queens, the lady in Philadelphia. And I don't think that people are going to like where this is going to end up because either these laws are going to get changed or the squatters are learning how to exploit these laws. The squatters are learning that even if they didn't intend to do this, the enticement, the incentive to do this is so great that people are going to start doing this. Think about it. If you can get yourself like $1 million house just for living in it, we already saw that happen in the UK, and we giggle about the UK because they're further down the rabbit hole than we are in this experiment in statism. But how is this going to end up? What's going to happen here in Texas at least? Someone's going to be faced with the situation, not you, but someone's going to be faced with the situation where they're going to come home after being away on a business trip or being offshore or maybe they just inherited a house or maybe it was their brothers and they just hadn't been there in a while. There's going to be squatters there. And you're going to be stuck with the horrible situation because if you call the police, they will remove you. But that's your property. And there's stand your ground laws, and there's castle doctrine, and it's coming right for me. Would that be a better option? If you want to keep your house, you now have to shoot the squatter and claim that it was a self-defense thing, or you're going to lose your house. I mean, what are the perverse incentives that are being created by this? I'm not saying you should do that. I'm not saying I would do that. I'm not saying that's a good idea. I'm not saying it's legal. But I'm saying look at the incentives that are created when you start subverting private property. And now in order for you to have your own home, you can't just pay for it. You can't just keep up the insurance and the taxes on it and have all your documents in order and have proper title and everything legally filed with the state. You're going to have to start shooting people now? Is that a better solution? I doubt it. What would you do? Would you just shoot squatters? Doesn't that make sense? I mean, on a logical algorithm here, what are you going to do? Call the cops or just shoot them? 800-288-WBAP. I'm not telling you to do it. I'm not recommending anyone does it. I'm just saying the way the incentives are brought up, just give them the old "what's coming right for me" defense. Couple of shots, no more squatters. Go drag them off your property. No charges. You don't have to worry about a court battle. You don't have to worry about any fees or lawyers. You don't have to worry about anyone changing the locks on you. To the phones we go. This is Ben in Frisco. You're on the James Show. What do you think, sir?
Yes, sir. Hi. Nice talking with you. I've been researching this ever since I heard this, and it's just unbelievable, the laws in these states that that allow this kind of thing. And just in my research, it's like the criminals, trespassers squatters in this case, have more rights than the homeowner. And so I'm just wondering, if I take my family off on a vacation for a week and I come back and there's squatters there, can I not re-enter my home? Kick them out?
Okay, so you're asking a question that changes from state to state. There's 50 different set of squatters laws, and Texas is pretty good. But then there's also a little bit of bifurcation even in that, in the fact that there's squatters rules for tenants, as in like you're a landlord renting an apartment, or squatters who are going for property ownership. If you're going for the right to occupy a dwelling versus the right to own a dwelling, there's two separate rules there. Now, the stories that we're hearing are they have weakened some of the squatters' rights in these northeastern states, in these blue states, to where you only have to occupy an apartment for 30 days before the landlord has to treat you as a tenant, and he can still evict you, but he has to go through the full eviction process. Now, we all care about Texas, right? I mean, you're in Frisco. What do you care about what's going on in Philadelphia or New York? For Texas, I couldn't find how many days it would take for you to get the rights you would have as a renter. But if you're going to occupy someone's property, it has to be for 10 years. And that's one of the longer ones. And you have to do all kinds of other questions. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and for Texas and a lot of these states that have stronger protections for the property owner, you have to do things like not hide. You have to not be told to leave. There has to be no trespassing signs, and you have to pay all the property taxes and keep that all up and work in order. So basically, nobody does that anymore. These were laws that were written for the frontier more than anything else, not for goobers trying to get a free house. Anyway, go ahead, Ben.
Well, I think we need to contact our representatives and get that law changed. And the other thing is, I was thinking about is all these folks that have all these B&Bs. They may sit vacant for a couple of weeks or more. You know, they come back and want to rent it, and somebody's already living there.
Yeah, right. That's that. So many good points here. But remember, the squatters' rights to the people who are the true believers, the academics, the people who've actually read Saul Alinsky and Marx, and they're the ones writing the playbook. We know why they like it, but it's really easy to see how the mindless foot soldier, the useful idiot, loves it too. Because even if you don't know all the economics or whatever philosophical reasoning behind it, just generally speaking, this is a policy that punishes people who are not usually politically aligned with you and rewards people who usually are politically aligned with you. It punishes a Republican constituency, this upper middle class group that gets like maybe a second house to rent, or maybe they have 3 houses, or maybe they have a lake house. What stratus of society is that? The small business owners that are paying taxes and following the rules. That's a red constituency. And who are the losers
you mentioned earlier? What if they break into your home? And what about the stand your ground laws?
Well,
if they break it, they have to break in to get in, obviously.
Well, that's written in the rules that you can't have forced entry into the house, but that doesn't seem to be stopping these people in the Northeast, because the story I read out of Queens, the story I read out of Manhattan, the story I read out of Philadelphia, of course there was forced entry. There's no other way around it. So yeah, for you and I, that makes sense, but they're finding ways around it. They are finding ways to punish the people that vote for them, that vote against them, and reward the people that vote for them. Loyalty to the party is rewarded. Disloyalty to the party is punished. And generally speaking, that's what it is. And that's part of the reason they like the vaccine mandates, and they like the fact that all these pilots and nurses and soldiers and teachers lost their job for not getting a vaccine. Because who was rushing to get the vaccine? Team Blue. Who was hesitant to get the vaccine? Team Red. So good. Whether this policy is good or not on the scientific merits, it punishes their enemies and rewards their allies. And for the people who want to get philosophically deep about it, I can explain it that way. And the people who are just shallow and I just want free stuff, there's an explanation for that too.
And as always, you give good advice.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you calling in. That is Ben in Frisco.